Jesus said, you know, it's easy to pray for your friends. It's easy to pray for those you love. What you get to do is pray for your enemies. So this is your opportunity to come up here and ask questions. Give me a topic, give me a question, and we'll see what we can do with it this morning. So there you go. All right, come on up here. Please make sure you say your name, and then we'll just line up down the aisle there, and we'll get as many as we can.
Everyone, my name's Dee Dee. I always talk about church. I always talk about CSLDallas, but I have people ask me what it is about, and I don't know exactly how to explain CSLDallas to people. So if you could help me out with that, that would be great, because I would love to share it. And I think a lot of people are thinking I'm Juju, and that's the kind of church I'm going to, and I'm trying to explain to them it's not exactly like that. So.
Beautiful. Yes, we get this question a lot. Thank you for this fabulous question. And one of the things we do a couple times a year is we do something called Invitation to Message. And it's at a Sunday afternoon where we really talk about how do you talk about CSLDallas and the science of mind. And so when you see that coming across, if that's something that you want to learn how to do, please do take advantage of it. So there's a couple things that you can say. One is we're a spiritual center that's about spiritual living. I talk a lot about we are a positive, practical spirituality that meets where East and West spirituality meet. We draw from the teachings of the Gospels, and we draw from the teachings of Hinduism. And we marry those two into a positive, practical spirituality. It's the shortest answer I know. And then if they're really interested, right, then that will open the door.
Awesome. Thank you.
So hopefully that's helpful. And it's a great question. You know, the other thing that you can do is when somebody asks you about it, you can also share from what is the most important thing that you've learned here. So what CSLDallas is for me is I really learned to take responsibility for my life, and I really learned how to manifest it, or how to create the kind of life that I really want. Or I really learned how to heal myself, or I really learned that I wasn't alone, or I really learned about my oneness. Do you see, that will help also connect with people when you talk about not so much, you know, what it's theoretically about or theologically about, but what you have gained by being a part of it. All right, good question. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, CSLDallas.
Good morning.
Hey, music department. Love you guys. I have a very important question. I'm sorry. I am Brian Edney.
Yep.
And I'm working on not being so introverted. I have a really important question. Does this shirt make me look fat? No, I'm just kidding. No, the truth is that it's not so much a question as is a thank you. And I'm just going to be very transparent. I am the face of overcoming adversities and obstacles. And I'm so proud of Dr. Petra because we're both from Pennsylvania. But I have been through a lot. And for so long I was angry. And I said I would never, ever. First of all, I'm a recovering preacher's kid. So the traditional theology doesn't work for me. But I just want to say thank you for you and Reverend Karen for being who you are, for showing a positive light around just, you know, women and the LGBTQ community and community of faith. And for a long time I was so angry at people who didn't look like me because of the oppression I saw out in the world. But when I embraced new thought, I realized that we really truly are one. We were one. And when I got rid of the anger and shed the anger, then the world opened up to me of infinite possibilities. And so I have to look at the world from a different viewpoint now, because you know, I have to see it through spiritual eyes and not human eyes. So I thank you so much for what you're doing here. I believe in giving people their flowers while they can smell them. And I thank you as a congregation for embracing me unconditionally with all of my foibles and isms. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Patty.
Hi, Patty.
Hi. A couple of years ago, I embraced the scripture that says for us to pray for those who would do us harm. And ISIS was in the news then too. And my question is, how can I give voice to pray for what is apparently evil? I know we're all one. What I have been able to do was to see that most of those ISIS members are young men and women who come from a background that doesn't know what we know. And so I pray for their eyes and souls to be open to that place within themselves, as well as our leaders that don't seem to know that either. So I would just like for you to help me give voice to those things, that vision that I have for those people to be turned.
So, Patty, it seems as though you have a voice of your own. You already have your voice. You already have seen it from a particular spiritual point of view and are already speaking it. Does that not feel not like enough?
No, I'm still very sad. I don't feel the joy for all of humanity that I know is possible.
Yeah.
My
So
heart is breaking right now for
Yes,
what's happened in the last
absolutely.
week.
Yeah, and whether it's ISIS or not, we actually don't know. And, so here's the deal. Our spiritual practice does not relieve us of feeling our feelings. So your heart should be breaking. All of our hearts should be breaking. And there is a deep and profound truth that says fanaticism and hatred and violence are not okay. What we do is we recognize that the people who are engaging in those acts are not in and of themselves evil. They aren't corrupted, soulless beings with no hope of redemption. We see them as children of God. We see them as true beings of the same makeup as us. But we also know that each and every human being has freedom of choice, free will to understand life the way that they understand it, and behave out of that understanding. And some of that behavior moves us further and further and further and further outside of behavior that we would see as in alignment with what spiritual truth teaches us. Connection, oneness, personal responsibility, compassion, communion with the divine, seeing the God in each other. Knowing that we can't take things that aren't ours. We can only give from the overflow. I mean, these are all truths that are taught in every spiritual tradition. And so every spiritual tradition, unfortunately, has fanatics. And we can point over there, or we can point in our own backyard, and we can point to every faith tradition and every point of view. And so the first thing we have to do is we have to stop blanketly stereotyping them. So the minute I hear you use the term they, and you gave it a label, right, I know that you've fallen into a stereotype. So we must avoid stereotypes at all costs. These are individual people behaving in an individual way. They don't represent a group or a culture or a religion or a race or an ethnicity. They represent a point of view. And I know that there have been times in my life when I have done things of which I am ashamed. I have done things that were completely counter to the truth of who I knew myself to be. But I thought that it would either get me something I didn't have or relieve me of pain that I was experiencing. And some of that stuff that I did was pretty hurtful to other people. And so I seek to extrapolate that, and I can only imagine how much pain or how much separation or how much anger someone or a group of people must have or be feeling to behave in the ways in which they are behaving. Does it make it okay? Absolutely not. But it allows me to separate the act, which personally I have no trouble calling evil. And I'm not a superstitious New Thought person. I'm happy to call behaviors bad, and I'm happy to call them evil. What I know is the people who are doing those acts are neither inherently bad nor inherently evil. I know that they are separated from that truth. And so Jesus said, it's easy to pray for your friends. It's easy to pray for those you love. What you get to do is pray for your enemies. And that isn't just to whap, 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 get better, right? That's not what it means to pray for your enemies. It means to pray for our ability to see the truth in them and to hold them in that light. And every time our heart breaks, that means something. That means there's something that needs to be said, something that needs to be prayed for, or something that needs to be done. Our hearts break for a reason, and we don't want to cover it up. We want to feel that feeling and then move in the world the best way we know how. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think you have somebody right behind you, and then we'll get to you, Michael. Bill was in line, okay?
Hi, I'm Bill Holman.
Hi,
and
Bill.
All great teachers are great because they're always learning. What area of science of mind or spirituality that intrigues you that you would like to learn more about?
Okay, so your assignment, should you choose to accept it, I'm teaching this class called Deep Mysticism. It was by invitation only for people who have graduated from Inward Journey or become practitioners, and we're reading some amazing books. And there's an assigned reading over the holidays for the month that we're on break, and it's called The Unbearable Wholeness of Being. The Unbearable Wholeness of Being by a woman whose name at the moment escapes me. Not the unbearable lightness of being, right? That's the play on words. The Unbearable Wholeness of Being. And she is tracing the thread of consciousness out of the Christian tradition through the Christian mystics into quantum physics and into reality today. And her ability to do that, this is all stuff that I've known in part, and you've heard me speak about actually in part, but this arc, the way that she is drawing it together, and is such a profound undergirding of what we teach in the science of mind. Do you see, I am fundamentally not superstitious. I deeply believe that there is not only a presence that we can experience, but there is a law that we are responsible for using. And it is actually, it's actually our responsibility to use it. And I am confronted, just like the rest of you, with the times when it doesn't seem to be working, or it doesn't seem to be right, or it doesn't seem to be unfolding correctly, in my point of view, whatever correct might be. And so I'm constantly exploring this nexus between science and psychology and spirituality, and seeing how they support each other to make sure that I'm not blindly following something, that I'm not saying it because some teacher that I thought was impactful said it, or not because somebody said something and I was inspired by it, but to be actually able to get a hold of it and understand it in a way that truly makes sense to me. I mean, that's one of the things that I think is so amazing about New Thought and the Science of Mind. You're not asked to check your intelligence at the door. You're actually asked to bring your whole self to it, spirit, soul, and body, heart and mind. And so the other place that is really, that I'm really pushing into is this notion in the science of mind where we have, it's called the science of mind, right? And Ernest Holmes talks about thought and mental stuff, and he uses all these terms. And so in the last 20 or 30 years, there's been a little bit of a backlash, not dissimilar to what has gone on in our country, about, well, you know, that's all just cerebral and mental, and you got to have heart, and you got to be in your heart, and you got to experience, you know, in your heart, and it's all about how you feel, and that's actually not true. And when Ernest Holmes uses thought, he means consciousness, and he means this whole system, heart, mind. And of course, that's what heart math teaches us. It's called heart math, right? This paradoxical relationship of the wholeness of heart and mind. And we constantly want to go, one is better than the other, one is more important than the other. And it's the integrated reality of the two. And so, yeah, so those are all the places where I'm exploring.
Well, as usual, I just learned something, so thank you.
So thanks for the question, Bill. Yay, ask me again next year, it'll be something else. But right now, that's what it is.
Good morning again. I'm Michael, and this is one of my best.
Catherine, just go ahead and stand up in the aisle so we can see who's in line. There you go. And I see someone. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
This is always one of my best Sundays. The one when we hand out the envelopes, and I get a chance to watch people's eyes and see how they react. And then the other one we play Stump the Minister, because I've never been in any kind of church where a minister has enough courage, would be the proper word to say, just to stand up and answer any kind of question. So I applaud him. So I've got two questions. One, how do you balance the idea that we're responsible for our own individual selves with the idea that we should help other people and that kind of thing? And then, is there anything that Ernest Holmes has said that you don't agree with?
At least two things. There are at least two things that Ernest Holmes has said that I don't agree with. One of them is a big giant error in the metaphysical charts in the back of the book, as far as I'm concerned. If you want to know more about that, you should be an Inward Journey. That was a plug if you didn't catch it. Yes, there are a couple places where I don't actually agree with him. And so it's fun, right? Because we don't think of Ernest Holmes as some guru that we have to worship. And we do actually believe that there is a continuing unfoldment of the science of mind, and I'm constantly seeking my own understanding of it. And just because Ernest didn't say it doesn't mean that a new revelation isn't available. And just because Ernest did say it doesn't mean that it's absolutely, unalterably this truth, because we don't believe it is the direct, it is direct revelation, but it's not the inerrant word of God. And of course we have to remember that he was writing in the 1920s, 1930s, so he's his gender language, which annoys the hell out of me, right? And he really had a limited vocabulary because psychology was a nascent science, very new, right? And just because of the answer of this question, right? All this language about thought and mind, and today we would use the words consciousness, right? Every time that Ernest Holmes uses the term mind, if you were to translate it into your own mind into the word consciousness, that would update his material into our current expanded understanding, which I think is really important. So that's Ernest Holmes. Tell me again what the first question was. I've now gotten so excited about that, I forgot what it was.
The balancing of our own individual.
Oh, right. Ha-ha. So I don't, so not, you know, it's always so challenging to draw an analogy. And so I would like for you not to hear this analogy as parental or pejorative. But if I truly understand that every person is a part of my family, I would treat them like my children, or my sister, or my mom. Now, when I put that into context, I get that my child needs support to be raised and to learn things, opportunities, and I also get that he has to learn how to be responsible for his own life, right? And that's the dance. And when I think about my family members, I think about my mother, my father. I both offered to help when things were challenging for them, and I also knew that they were responsible for their own lives. And I was responsible for my response to them. I was responsible for my, well, get it together. You know, could you just get your shit together? What do you need me for, really? Really, I mean, can you imagine saying that to somebody in your family? Yes, you can. And when do you say it? When they have abused the family relationship, don't you? And you actually know when that is, even if you don't, even if you are complicit. That's called enabling, right? Even when you are complicit. And yet we know when those boundaries have been crossed. It's not always easy to take the time to really pay attention. It's not always easy to take the time to decide how am I going to take responsibility for how I show up in this situation. That's part of spiritual maturity, right? We have a tendency in the United States, and in particular in New Thought, we're so into ease and grace, we confuse it with convenience. Could just let that land for a minute, right? Yeah. Being on a spiritually disciplined path that requires us to live both love and law is anything but convenient. It takes a fair amount of personal awareness and a willingness to look at things for what they are, and to dance the lines, and to truly make choices and decisions, right? So my son is a grown man right now. He's a young man. He's 26, so he's turning 26 in 2 weeks. And as all young men, you know, I kept praying for him to hit 25 so that the cerebral cortex would finish developing and the executive functions would come online, right? And we've talked about it and teased about it, he and I, and so sure enough, that's actually happening. It's fabulous to watch. And so, right, and so that's the dance, right? Sometimes he needs things, and you know, and when the going is tough, I don't help him. I don't. He's responsible for his own life. But when the going is impossible, you better believe it. He knows my hand is right there. Do you see? That's what we do for each other. And so to me, it's not a hard equation when we recognize that we are, you know that song, We're One Big Family, that we don't sing it just because it's a catchy tune. And we don't sing it because it makes us feel better. If we're truly all one in the individualized expressions of this one, if we're all part of the whole, we are all family. And so I am as responsible for my life as I am responsible for the way in which I interact with yours. And I can help you, grow you, I can hold your hand, I can lift you and give to you when you need it, and I can enable you. And my job is to take responsibility for what is needed when. Will it always be the right? I don't ever do anything always right, right? If we're dancing a line, we're going to fall off on one side, and we're going to fall off on the other, but we're constantly seeking to navigate that line. So thanks for the question, Michael.
Okay, so I was raised a fundamentalist Christian. And my name is Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
And with my parents and, other people, it's always been kind of an irritant to them that I am woo-woo. And so the big kicker is, where does Jesus fall in this? And so it's like, of course, when you're raised in that particular denomination, it's like Jesus is your Savior and the Good Shepherd. And then we're taught that God loves you. But somehow, there's this other part that God is going to kick your ass or kill you because you are a creepy sinner and a jerk. And something's wrong with you. And so, where does new thought come with that? It's like, I know that my relationship with Jesus is not that, but it used to be that.
Right.
And so I've not really ever, and when I read things that are in theory that are channeled or whatever by Jesus, some of the books that we've had, they're very moving and they're so loving and so wonderful. And I think of the Good Shepherd one, and that's who he is, if he's a he. So who is Jesus really? And where do we hold that? What do we do with that?
It's a great question. It's a great question. Here's another plug. Take my metaphysical Bible class, New Testament. We spend 8 weeks on it. We could spend a year. Okay, so it's a great question. So science of mind is 50% the teachings of Jesus and 50% the Hinduism as portrayed by Sri Aurobindo. Heavily influenced by psychology, mental science, and science and the other religions. But if we go back to that first statement, the teachings of Jesus. So what New Thought in Science of Mind understands is that Jesus expressed, lived from that place of unified cosmic consciousness that we are all seeking. That we actually know is the truth of our being in some intellectual form, but have not yet fully embraced or fully engaged with on a day-to-day basis. And so the science of mind relies heavily on the actual teachings of Jesus. It is done unto you as you believe. Your faith has made you whole. Ask believing you've already received, and you shall receive. These are the fundamental aspects of the teaching that teach us how to use the law. And then we observe his life. Who did he have lunch with? First of all, he was accused of being a drunkard and a partier. So he was clearly in love with the manifest body of God. And then who did he sit down at the table with? Oh, those women, tax collectors. And what do these people represent but the non-privileged, well, he called them the Pharisees, which was the name of a Jewish sect at the time. The people who look very religious on the outside, right? And so Jesus was always more interested in the intentionality behind it. So his Beatitudes his Beatitudes are all teachings of consciousness. The Lord's Prayer is a perfect prayer of consciousness. The problem is that then we got into the teachings about Jesus, right? And so when Christianity became the religion of the state, when Constantinople had his big conversion, and Christianity became when church and state got married, and the empire, so that influenced it. And then we had theologians that came along, so St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas. And of course, everybody has direct revelation. The problem is we get direct revelation through us, through our own, right, filters. And so all of that began to impact things. And then, of course, then we had the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Trent. Well, they only had these councils because there were other ways of interpreting the scripture. Lots of people were interpreting it differently, so they had to have councils to decide what was the way to interpret it, right? And so over the hundreds of years, it became this And what we're teaching, what you learn today only is 400 years old. The version of Christianity that you learn today is only 400 years old. It's the product of the Reformation, the German Reformation, and the Scientific Revolution. And this notion that you have to believe in Jesus. Why? Because we now live in a fact-based scientific reality. And so you prove your spirituality by being able to believe in something as opposed to understanding how your beliefs affect reality. And so that's why, so this book, The Unbearable Wholeness of Being, is really, it's really an extraordinary unraveling of some of these things, really powerful, and then builds it into quantum physics. So Science of Mind and New Thought is enamored with Jesus and his teachings because we actually believe of him as a way shower and an example. I would not call him a shepherd. I think he was perfectly willing for us to go our own way. And for us to learn our own truths. I don't think that that he believed that he and actually he taught that until you were ready to actually do the hard work, that the seed would fall on barren soil. And so I think the shepherd long came later. And of course, okay, I can't give you the whole talk right now because then you have to think about how the Hebrews held him and that he was actually a Jewish rabbi and he was answering the Messiah call, and then you have to go all the way back to Isaiah and you have to see how, and so, you know, blah, blah, blah. So here's the thing. Go out and get the Jesus Seminar version of the Gospels. And the Jesus Seminar, they took all the things, you know, in the red letter edition of the Bible, everything is in red is supposed to be what Jesus said. And so they took that and they spent years in small groups of people using philology and linguistics and various studies like that to determine which was actually the teachings of Jesus and which might have been, because of course it was all oral history, right, and then translated into all these various languages and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that will help. Okay, or take my 8-week class. And it's a great question, though. It's a great question. And I don't spend a lot of time teaching the teachings of Jesus because I did not get raised in that. I was raised in Catholicism. We weren't allowed to have our own Bibles. I completely understood the mystical Christ. I did not have any relationship with Jesus whatsoever until I actually got into Science of Mind. My source text is the Science of Mind textbook. So I don't teach a lot of the teachings of Jesus by itself, only in reference to how I understand the science of mind unfolds. Other people have very deep relationship with Jesus, and that's fabulous, and that's a fabulous thing. Okay, another question. We're going to just take these two.
Okay, my name's Nelson.
Hi, Nelson.
So I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to try to get a better understanding of something that I'm working on. I'm taking 2 classes, and I have projects for both. And so in one of them, I've decided that I'm using a film canister as a way of showing what I've learned. My question is, and this is kind of more of a basic kind of question, is I look at that and I think, is that, and I guess it's because I don't really understand it, and would the canister itself be my conscious mind, or would that be, I guess I don't understand what subjective mind and...
Yes, it's
so
good.
I understand, and I don't know if the film itself, is that my conscious mind, or, but it's important to me to understand this.
Absolutely. We understand that every analogy and metaphor will break down if we push it too far, right? Okay, because we're talking about a physical thing to example something that is not physical. So we just get that out of the way and understand that. There will be places where the analogy breaks down. But if you think of this film, if you think of the film, so or the film projector, really. It's not the film canister, it's really the film projector. The film projector is the way the universe works. The electricity that's plugged into is the source. And that source shows up as light. Right? Yes. The slides or the film that you're putting in there, that is what is housed in your subjective mind. That's the pictures and beliefs and thoughts and attitudes that you have created over the course of a lifetime that's running in your film. And the wall is this physical universe. So you want to know what's in your film, you just look at the wall, right? You know what's there. Your conscious mind is the one who can say, wait, no, I don't like that picture. I'm going to take that picture out. I'm going to put a new picture in. Your conscious mind is the one who says, you know, I don't like this whole film. I'm going to, script. We need a new script. Okay, we're going to write a new script. We need some new actors. That's your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is the one that is deciding what's going to be in front of that light. That's going to be shining. The light's going to be because the light will shine through anything. It doesn't care. You can put a black slide in there and shut the light out completely. The light doesn't go, wait, what are you doing? The light's just doing its thing, right? Shining. So the conscious mind, your conscious mind, is your ability to choose what you put in front of the light that is going to project on the wall. What thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, and ideas you have that you're holding that is the mold, or the, in this instance, let's not mix metaphors, in this instance, that is the image, right? The colors, is it red, is it blue, is it multicolored, what does it look like, all of that. That is what you're creating or you're deciding about. But ultimately, all of those thoughts and beliefs coalesce into an actual image that then lives in subjective mind. And it's what's running the system, right? It's running through your film projector. It's constantly running through the film projector. And without conscious engagement, it'll keep running the same slides, right? Different relationship, same person. Different job, same issues. It's okay, right? That's that film on a loop with no conscious intervention. Conscious intervention says, wait, I'm done. And now and you know, you got to write the script, you got to hire the actors, you got to paint the paint, you got to make the. I mean, it takes work to make a new slide or a new film. So hopefully that's helpful.
Well, there was, yes. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Nelson. All right, last one. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve,
Hi, Steve.
and I have taken her classes that are wonderful, so that's a plug-in for her. Anyway, I'm going to ask this question in the beginning and end. Is there some point that I could be so spiritually minded that I serve no earthly purpose? And I think about the monks off in Nepal, way up on a hill. They're just gardening and humming and sniffing incense and stuff, and I don't know what they do. But anyway, and I think about the Essenes that go out in the desert and just, you know, they're not contributing to society at all. And then I think about the addicts, whether it's shopping or enabling or alcohol, drugs, whatever, that are just not even participating anymore. Anyway, so I can go to classes, I can study, I can have a spiritual practice and do all this sort of stuff. But at some point, is there some point in time where I check out of life? Is there some, you know, that I become so spiritually minded that I serve no earthly purpose?
No. No, the answer to that is no. It may not be an earthly purpose, but you always serve a purpose. 100% of the time, your purpose is to express life as only you can. And so, see, this is where science of mind differs from some of the Eastern traditions. We're not looking to not serve an earthly purpose. We're not looking to transcend the earth. We're actually looking to be in heaven on earth, rather than going to something that is beyond this state. This is manifest body of God. How much better can it get? This is the Play-Doh of the universe, and you have been gifted with the self-awareness of how to take that Play-Doh and mold it into creation. And you have been gifted with free will. You can mold it into anything. You can mold it into a life just for you. You can mold it into a martyred life just for others. You can mold it into beautiful art. You can mold it into success. You can mold it into anything. Right? We have the freedom to do that. And in the science of mind, we understand in our teaching symbol, right, that third portion there at the bottom is the manifest body of God, and it is contained within the circle that represents the allness and the wholeness of it all. So we're not trying to overcome the physical manifestation. We're trying to recognize that it is the playground, it is the expression of life itself. So absolute, undifferentiated reality. Okay, so Michael, here's one of the places where I disagree with Ernest Holmes. Absolute undifferentiated reality, which is the potential for all things, can't actually be self-aware because there's nothing to be self-aware of because there's only itself. How do you know that you're self? Unless there is something that is other than you. But if you're the vast infinite isness that is everything, there is no sense of self. So I have a real issue when Ernest Holmes says that. Anyway, but I think what he means is that the infinite universal ultimate reality has a self when it individualizes as self-consciousness. By definition, self-consciousness has to be individualized. It has to have a sense of separation, or it wouldn't be individualized. And the moment that we postulate an infinite creativity without creation is ridiculous, right? An infinite creativity for what? Just to be? There's no creativity in that. So the moment that we postulate this infinite ultimate reality that is constantly forever moving into its self-expression, we instantly have creation. So Science of Mind says creation is always and forever going on. It never started and it will never end. It is as eternal as this infinite reality itself. And so at some point, this body will cease to function as well as it could in the physical plane because it is designed to change. Your spirit is not. That which is sourced from the infinite presence is the eternal, deathless, changeless part of you. And so Science of Mind teaches that when this body is laid down, you'll go on as an individualized expression, and you will manifest and create in some other form or fashion on some other plane. And you will do that for eternity, because while you are doing that, you are God expanding and becoming more of itself, of the beingness that it already is. So your purpose will never be complete because you will always be you. Always.